Before diving into this story, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe, because here, every story is a new emotion you won't want to miss. Imagine your phone rings, it's a hospital. A patient's been in a serious accident, and you are the only emergency contact in his phone. But here's the thing. You have no idea who he is. What would you do? Eli Mendez, 26, was the kind of woman who found peace in silence. A librarian by day, she preferred the company of books to crowded places. Her life was quiet, predictable, and safe, just the way she liked it. But that fragile sense of calm shattered the moment her phone rang. The screen read, "Unknown, emergency contact." On the other end, a hospital voice, clinical yet urgent. "You're listed as the emergency contact for a patient named Leon Prado. He's in critical condition." Eli's heart skipped. That name meant nothing to her. "I think you have the wrong person," she whispered. But the nurse's voice didn't budge. "You were the only contact he has." Driven by confusion and an odd sense of responsibility, Eli went to the hospital. Maybe it was a system glitch, someone else's Eli. But when she arrived, the doctor confirmed no ID, no wallet, no phone contacts, only her. Nothing else to hold on to. Just her name, saved under one word, emergency. 3 weeks earlier, the air was golden inside the tiny corner bookstore where Eli often escaped her world. The smell of old paper, the warmth of amber light, the soft jazz playing from a dusty speaker, it was her sanctuary. She reached for a worn poetry book on the top shelf. As she tugged it free, 2 more fell, one landing near the feet of a stranger. He bent down to pick it up. Their eyes met for the first time as he handed her the book. He was tall, with quiet eyes that seemed to carry stories he hadn't told anyone. There was something raw but gentle about him. "Careful," he said with a soft smile. "This author tends to make people fall in love without warning." Eli smiled, caught off guard by the charm in his voice. "Better that than falling for real," she replied, half laughing. Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. He crouched to help her gather the scattered books. Their fingers brushed once, lightly, just enough for her breath to catch. They didn't introduce themselves. No names, no small talk. Just a short silence that didn't feel awkward. It felt honest. They stood there for a moment longer than strangers normally do, both seemingly unsure whether to leave or stay. "I've read this one 3 times, he said, pointing to the book she held. "Page 42 always gets me." Then he stepped back, giving her space to pass. She turned the book in her hands, half expecting him to say something else. But he didn't. He just gave her a quiet nod and walked out of the shop. Eli stood frozen for a second, staring at the door that had already closed behind him. It felt oddly significant, that moment. Like something had opened, but neither of them knew how to name it. She flipped to page 42. There was a line underlined in fading pencil, and in the quiet, "I found something louder than sound." She smiled to herself and tucked the book under her arm, her heart beating a little faster than usual. She never expected to see him again. It was just one of those strange, beautiful encounters life sometimes drops in your lap, then snatches away. Still, she thought of him a few times after that. Wondered if he ever thought of her. She didn't know his name. He didn't know hers, but something unspoken had passed between them. Something rare, something that made her feel seen, in a way books often did, but people rarely did. Back in the present, sitting beside the hospital bed, Eli stared at the man now covered in wires and silent breaths. His face bruised still, but those were the same eyes, the same soul, and suddenly it didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt like a decision he had made, to trust her. Somehow, in that fleeting moment, he chose her, and now here she was, holding his name in her hands like a secret. Leon Prado, the man she barely knew, but couldn't walk away from. Eli didn't owe him anything, not really. But something in her heart pulled her back to that hospital room day after day. She brought with her the book from the bookstore, the one that had fallen, the one with the underlined page. She sat by his side and read aloud, her voice trembling at first, then steady. It wasn't just for him, it was for her too. The nurses watched with quiet curiosity. One of them whispered, "You must be family?" Eli only shook her head, unsure of how to explain. "I'm not," she said, "but I think maybe I was meant to be." She left chamomile tea on the nightstand, replaced wilting flowers with fresh ones, and always came with a new poem, a ritual of quiet hope. Days blurred. Calm asleep and soft machines. Eli started talking to him as if he were listening, about her childhood, her favorite lines in old novels, the way loneliness echoes louder in silence. Sometimes she cried, but mostly she smiled, as if willing him back to the world through every syllable. The connection deepened, even without his voice. The nurses began to comment. "We've never seen anything like this," one said. "You're not just a visitor, you're a light." Eli didn't know what she was anymore. A stranger, a friend, a ghost from a 5-minute meeting. All she knew was that she wanted him to wake up, and that somehow, without knowing why, she believed he would. One evening, just past midnight, as moonlight filtered through the blinds, something changed. Eli was reading a Pablo Neruda poem when she heard a sound, soft, like breath catching. She looked up. His eyes were open, slowly blinking, confused, then focused on her. Her heart stopped. She stood, unable to speak. Lion's lips moved, cracked and dry, but she heard it. Faint, barely a whisper. "I knew you'd come." Eli didn't realize she was crying until his fingers weakly reached for hers. Their hands met gently, like they had in the bookstore. Not a miracle, something quieter, but no less powerful. It wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. Leon's strength returned in slow, quiet waves. With each passing day, he looked more alive, more like the man Eli had only glimpsed for seconds weeks ago. They spoke often, mostly about small things, books, music, favorite childhood memories. Laughter came naturally, as if it had always been theirs to share. Eli found herself waiting for these moments, for the way his eyes lit up when he smiled. One afternoon, sitting by the hospital window, she finally asked, "Why me? Why was my number the one you saved?" Leon didn't flinch. "Because you looked at me," he said softly. "You really looked like I mattered. And when you're invisible most of the time, that kind of gaze feels like a miracle." Eli didn't reply, just held his hand, eyes shining with something between understanding and awe. As Leon began to heal, their bond stretched beyond hospital walls. Short walks became their ritual, through gardens, past cafes, under the golden glow of early evening. He recited lines of poetry, she brought him playlists. Sometimes they walked in silence, but it was a silence that pulsed with feeling. A closeness formed, unspoken, but undeniable. Something tender. Something real. Then, one day in the park, everything shifted. A man stood watching from across the path, plain clothes, but eyes too sharp. Leon stiffened. Without a word, he took Eli's hand and guided her away, fast but calm. "Don't look back," he whispered. Eli obeyed, her pulse rising, her fingers gripping his. They sat on a bench out of sight. Leon's voice was low, urgent. "I used to work in cybersecurity, high level. I found things I shouldn't have, corruption, laundering, names, big ones." His eyes met hers. "I tried to disappear, that crash. It wasn't an accident. They tried to make me vanish." Eli's heart pounded, her world tilting, but his gaze never wavered. "I saved your number because you saw me, and I trusted that." Eli was quiet for a long moment. The wind danced through the trees around them. Then she spoke, steady and sure. "So what now?" Liam looked at her like she was the first clear sky after months of storms. Now we face it together, if you're willing. She didn't hesitate. She nodded. And in that moment, something unbreakable formed between them, forged not by time, but by truth. The evidence Leon had saved, encrypted, hidden, and buried deep, finally reached the right hands. With Eli by his side and the help of a journalist friend from his past, they brought the truth to light. The company was exposed. Justice, even if imperfect, started to move. It wasn't safe yet, but it was enough to breathe again. Leon was offered full identity protection, a new name, a clean slate, but he surprised everyone when he declined. "I don't want to hide anymore," he said. "I want to live as myself." Because the person I became was shaped by her. And for the first time in years, he felt free. Months passed, life slowed down. Together, Eli and Leon opened a small bookstore cafe on a quiet street corner. They filled it with poetry, second chances, and warm light. Locals began to gather, drawn by something intangible. Peace, maybe, or hope. Books lined the walls, music played softly. A jar on the counter invited customers to share the title of a book that changed their lives. Leon brewed the coffee. Eli ran the book club. Strangers left feeling a little less like strangers. The place became a heartbeat in the neighborhood. One rainy afternoon, a woman walked in, drenched and tired. Eli offered her tea. Leon handed her a book. She smiled through tears, whispering, "Thank you." Just like that, the cycle began again. Two people who were once lost, now helping others be found. That was the magic of their story. They never talked much about the past. It was there, in glances and silences, but it didn't weigh them down. They lived in the now, in small moments, in holding hands behind the counter, in finding joy in the ordinary. And somehow, that was everything. Sometimes life gives us more than one chance. Not all stories begin with love at first sight. Some start with confusion, with mystery, with a name and a phone. But if we're brave enough to answer the call, we might just find the person we were always meant to meet. Sometimes 5 minutes is all it takes to change the direction of a life. A glance, a choice, a name saved in a phone. What if the next emergency is actually an invitation? Would you answer the call? Maybe the universe is waiting quietly for you to show up.